So I want to rap to you a little bit about humor and its function. Uh, and this is sort of a continuation, a part two, if you like, of the video, the discussion, I should say, of the robbery of intent and context of language and how that leads to censorship, again, particularly in regards to comedy. And so when I closed off that video, I ended with where I will now pick up, which was humor and its function. So as soon as I get my eyes lasered, I can't wait, because then y'all ain't gonna know if I have notes or not, which I do. Hence, I'm wearing my fucked up glasses. Anyway, so humor and its function. So all these attempts at censoring speech and, well, that's offensive, therefore it must be stamped out. It's a fundamental misunderstanding, not only of the function of humor, and that is, alarming enough, but even more so than that is there's no understanding of what humor is. So God help us, how can we understand the function of something that we don't even understand or acknowledge the existence of? Right? So, I mean, maybe we're just fucked and we'll never get anywhere on that. I don't know. But so humor, the function of it is make believe. It's imagination. And so that's pretty damn frightening that people can't understand that. But humor, broadly speaking, is generally reliant upon a trope of reality, and then a small detail of that, or sometimes the entire trope itself, will be flipped on its head, and that's where the humor comes from. A favorite example of mine, I'm not entirely sure this translates all that well, but I'll use it because I thought of it just then. There was I think it was a Super Bowl commercial a few years ago. This guy goes into a convenience store, grabs, chips, whatever the fuck. And if I recall the commercial correctly, the guy, the checkout guy, just stands there and doesn't move. And then so the guy walks out and he goes, I don't understand what the big deal was. And then the reveal, he was wearing a ski mask because he was skiing with friends. That's hilarious. So they took the common trope of, well, everyone wearing a ski mask in a store is a robber, and they flipped it on its head. That's fucking genius. And that, again, very broadly, generally speaking, is comedy. The loose formula, I guess you could say, for comedy, or I guess the key formula, you could say. So the function of comedy, the function of humor. Yeah, I know it's sad. I'm even sitting here having to explain this, but the function of comedy and humor is to enthrall, entertain, and enlighten. This is the comedian as social critic and secular moralist, which is a terrific book. Analyzing Lenny Bruce. That was the subtitle, but and that's truly what I believe comedy is, and why we laugh. It chases away our fear and our anxiety and our depression. It makes us forget about the grim, harsh realities of life, the bad shit, even if it's just for a moment. It makes us forego the need to judge what is being said as moral or immoral, offensive, inoffensive, wholesome, that was the word, wholesome or obscene. The only immediate judgment that we need to make when we step into a comedy club or when we are listening to a comedian is this funny or is this not funny? Not is this moral or immoral, obscene or wholesome, offensive or inoffensive. The immediate judgment is this funny or is this not funny? And when things are funny, even if they are offensive or immoral, we still laugh anyway because we are there to laugh. And that's the judgment that we're making. So to go back to, in that first video, I had referenced the pulpit, being in a church or being at a political rally. The only thing that you're judging, at least the only thing you should be judging at a political, I'll take it out, well, no, I'll say political rally. The only thing you should be judging at a political rally, and I'm going to define this as in a speech being given by a politician, the only thing you should be judging is, will this be a practical policy and an effective policy? Unfortunately, for the last 8 years, we've had the politics of feelings. Well, this feels really good, but that's not good policy. The same way that you should be listening to a politician and going, okay, does this policy, first of all, is it enforceable? Is it sustainable? And is it practical? And so the same way that when you listen to a comedian, you're judging, is this funny or is this not funny? And when you go to church, you're not judging, is this funny or is this not funny? The same way you're not judging the politician on, is this funny or not funny? The same way you're not judging the comedian on, is this practical or impractical? At the church, you're judging, is this spiritually sound and nourishing? Not is this funny or is this practical, but is this spiritually sound, what I'm hearing? Because I'm here, once again, for spiritual nourishment. Just like when you're at a political speech, you're there to hear a policy proposal. And when you're at a comedy club, you're there to hear, boys and girls say it together, comedy. You're there to laugh. So the only immediate judgment that you're making is this funny or is this not funny? And so in that judgment of funny, unfunny, you're able to forgive the cruelties of the universe. Truly. You're able to forgive the cruelties of the universe. You're able to forgive the prejudices of your fellow man. One of the funniest bits that Lenny Bruce had was this bit called How to Relax Your Colored Friends at Parties. And in the bit, he works with Eric Miller, this jazz guitarist, this black guy. And so in the bit, he plays just completely loaded. I know I've referenced this before in the video, but he's just totally loaded, and he's got a black guy there who it's presented as a friend, but in the bit they introduce themselves, and so it's clear that they're strangers. But at any rate, he attempts to become friends with him, and in his attempts to become friends with him, he makes such awkward, groping statements as proposing, seeing if he could get Miller some fried chicken and watermelon, asking if he knows Aunt Jemima. It's one of my personal favorites. And then repeatedly referencing and toasting famous black figures. Inviting him over the house just as long as he doesn't promise to do it to his sister. That's another great line. And it's hilarious. And you're not judging it as moral or immoral. You certainly can't judge Lenny Bruce as moral or immoral because he's an integrationist. That's a character he's playing in that sketch. And it's hilarious. And in that, you're able to forgive the prejudices or, I guess, stupidity, whatever you want to call it, of this character. So there's that. Now, a word on intent. If intent is good and pure, I truly, truly believe this. That's not really playing out on in the world and in my personal life, but I do believe truly that if your intent is good and pure, um, that will shine through. And so, in the case of comedy, if your intent is good and pure and designed solely to elicit laughter, if you make a joke aimed to hurt someone, even if it's in part ever written as, oh, this is going to hurt someone's feelings, then that is, as the Buddhists would say, not skillful. Um, because frankly, you know, I believe all of us should be here on this earth to reduce everyone's suffering. And that's what makes comedy awesome. It's like the ultimate reduction of suffering. But if you're writing a joke and you're not being funny, you're attacking someone. First of all, it's probably not going to be a good joke. It's going to be bad comedy. But second of all, your intention is not even to be funny. So at that point, you're outside of the bounds of comedy. But if ever, which is why I don't like the snarky late night guys who go for the cheap laughs of making fun of someone's like haircut and shit, and they think they're fucking edgy and insightful and funny. Like that's lowbrow, low hanging fruit. Um, but that's my taste, as I talked about before. But if your intent is good and pure and designed solely to elicit laughter, then how can it be said to be hateful? And again, I go back to the Michael Richards thing versus when Lenny Bruce said nigger. How can your intentions be said to be hateful? Or how can you be said to be hateful or your words said to be hateful if your intentions are pure? And I truly believe that if your intentions are pure, that shows through. And once again, you can see and hear the anger and the intent to enrage when Michael Richards said nigger. But when Lenny Bruce said nigger, you can very clearly hear the intention to grab by using those words and then draw in to drive a further philosophical and intellectual point and narrative and discussion through laughter. So again, comedian as secular moralist and social philosopher. So yeah, so if said with the intent to harm, first and foremost, or only, then that's not skillful, and frankly, it's immoral. I would go almost to the point of saying it's a violation of the non-aggression principle. But I don't know if I'd go quite that far. But at any rate, but the function of humor is laughter, enlightening, enthralling, entertaining, making us forget about the cruelties of life. And make no mistake, life is cruel. You can't get away from that. Only in heaven, in the divine, as I said in my other video. So, I mean, do I wish people were hateful and ignorant? No, of course not. But that's not something you can eradicate. So, and if you're set to eradicate that, you're going to be pretty fucking miserable because you're going to be working at it a long time. Anyways, that's all for now. Rate, comment, subscribe, all that shit. And also, I have started a Patreon page. It's Frank Dell, Dean of Satire and Mimicry. So definitely look that up and see if you can help a brother out. That would be great. And I guess that's all for now. Until next time, speak, listen, understand. Don't throw rocks. Don't run people over with cars and all the rest of it. All right.